And Sherry, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Commissioners, have you had a chance to review the minutes from the meeting held September 20th, 2022?
Yes.
Yes.
Any comments or anything? Someone want to, if there is no comments, does somebody want to make a motion to approve those minutes? Oh, first we got to adopt the agenda. Sorry, I got it out of order again. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Does someone want to move that we adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Second?
Everybody in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And now, back to where I was. Review and approval of the meeting minutes from September 20th. Everyone good with those?
Yes.
Yes.
Somebody want to make an motion to approve those?
I move to accept them, the minutes.
And I'll second that.
Everyone in favor of approving those minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So we have a public comment period for the items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone signed up to talk? Seemed like so many cars out there. No, all right, so nobody signed up. Okay, so the fifth item on our agenda is the second consideration of a preliminary plat requested by Wells Land Development LLC for a 58-lot residential subdivision on an 18.536 acre parcel located at 0 Stonewell Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 42-12-8. And I'm going to give the floor to Elisand.
Okay, so just as a quick reminder about this one, it is a 18.536 acre parcel that's a vacant land that's located behind Bellevue and Sumter Roads, and the application was for a 58-lot subdivision using the cluster development option. The public hearing was held at the September Planning Commission meeting, and the request was tabled at that meeting to allow more time to address staff's remaining comments about the plat. This is the resubmitted plat based on staff's comments. The overall layout is the same, but there have been some changes to the common area based on staff's comments. So these are staff's comments that I reviewed last time at the September meeting. The only comment on here that wasn't presented on at the September meeting was the second from last on the screen about providing clarification on the traffic estimates and assumed splits indicated on the plat. The presentation that the applicant gave at the September meeting didn't match the information that was on the plat that staff had. So I'll be going through each of these to note what the applicant did to address them. So the first comment about the recommendation to reduce the street pavement width to 30 feet in order to provide a 3-foot buffer between that back of the curb and the sidewalk. The applicant did go ahead and do this, and so this is a cross-section taken from the plat that shows now a 30-foot wide street, including the curb and gutter, a 3-foot grass buffer right here, and then a 5-foot sidewalk. So the applicant did go ahead and do that. The next recommendation by staff was that the trail surfaces in the common areas be crushed stone instead of mulch due to concerns about the maintenance and runoff. And this wasn't an ordinance requirement, just a recommendation from staff. And the applicant did go ahead and do this as well. Crushed stone paths are now indicated on the plat instead of mulch ones. The other two comments about providing the total lot square footages for each of the lots instead of dimensions. This has been done on the resubmitted plat, along with adding a signature line for the chair of the Planning Commission. The next two comments about the common areas, we requested that they confirm that the planned common areas shown on the common area improvements, that were shown on the plat meet the 1.39 acre requirement, and to note it. The applicant has done this. The common areas still include the crushed stone trails, the gathering spaces, and passive recreation areas, which are mostly vegetated. We also include a request that they indicate on the plat that the circle in the center of the trails was a gathering place, and that the paths of the trails are going to vary because of conditions on the ground, and the applicant has also noted this. So I wanted to show you real quick the changes to the improved common areas that have been made since the last meeting. You can see the trail network is a little bit more extensive than before, and 2 additional gathering areas were added, presumably to ensure that the acreage requirement for the improved area was met. The next comment about providing the clarification on the traffic estimates and assumed splits. Based on the presentation at the Planning Commission meeting last time, the applicant has updated this information on the plat, and it now matches the information that was presented at the September meeting, and is still within the is within the bounds of acceptable. And then finally, the note from Public Works about approval of the preliminary plat not constituting a final utility layout approval. The applicant confirmed they understood this. And so finally, after review and resubmittals based on staff comments, staff has concluded that the application conforms sufficiently with all the requirements of city code, and staff is therefore recommending approval. And I'm ready for any questions you might have at this time.
I just have a question because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now. We've already had the public hearing.
So I think if you have any questions for Alisand, or if you have any questions for the applicant.
Okay.
But the applicant is not going to present.
Right.
But if you have questions for either of them, you could do that, and then you would be obviously able to discuss and make a decision.
Okay. Do any of you have any questions for Alessandra, the applicant?
I don't have questions, but I do have several comments and recommendations, and that would be, again, to beseech the developer to consider lower density, and the comments that have been consistently brought forth from the community in that area about concerns about traffic, and that I would recommend that if this is passed, that council look at reestablishing all of the stop signs that were originally in that area, speed bumps, and anything else that's necessary to slow down the traffic in that area so that all of those communities that are interlinked would be safer, and that we can stop having these accidents which are already there, which could be escalated by another community being added. So that would be my comment.
Any other comments, questions?
I do believe this is a by right development,
It
correct?
is, it is. So I think,
This one,
do we make a motion to,
Yes, so you're not making a recommendation.
Right.
Because it has changed, so you are making the motion to either approve or deny the subdivision plat.
right,
And then the comments that Ms. Lambert brought up, if you would like, you can obviously then make that recommendation to council as kind of a separate, separate thing that they may want to look into related to traffic concerns.
okay, so if somebody, I get confused here, because if it's by right, what are we approving?
So what we're asking the planning commission to do is to essentially look at what staff has said. We've said it complies with the ordinance. And so this is asking the planning commission to also say that
That we
it
feel
complies with the
okay.
ordinance.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion? I think including Sherry's comments would be prudent in our motion, so if, or do we have to make two?
I would probably handle it separately.
Okay,
To make your to make a decision on the plat, but then also to make recommendations that you would like to go to council. Because the
Okay.
plat won't go to council, But any recommendations you make about traffic improvements would be a memo to them
Memo
that they
to
could then
council.
consider.
Okay, okay, I just want to make sure I'm doing it correctly.
Now I got a question.
Okay?
Basically, it is by right, and so we really can't deny.
Yes, I will say that the ordinance, staff has made our review and feel that it complies with all of the standards laid out in the ordinance. I'm not a lawyer, but I would say that if there was a denial of the subdivision plat, there would definitely be recourse on the part of the applicant to show and to try and demonstrate that, yes, they have met all of the tenets, and I don't know how that would all play out, but we as staff have reviewed the ordinance and believe that it complies, and are asking you to say whether or not you think it complies with the ordinance. And I do understand that it may not be what you support in terms of development or not, but do you think that the subdivision as shown complies with Waynesboro City Code that is currently adopted?
Okay, so,
Well, I really have my real question is, can you abstain?
Well, we have 4 members here tonight, and so we're already kind of low on individuals. It would take a vote of 3, I believe, to approve it.
okay.
And so, in my understanding of it, one or more than one abstention could lead to an issue where essentially it's still a denial,
Right.
and we're still running into the same situation.
Okay. I just,
So if,
but I feel like I would have to abstain.
so if, if one of us were to make a motion that says we too think that it conforms to the zoning criteria, that would be sort of be the motion, the first motion we're going to make,
Yes.
is say
Yes.
Yeah.
that we have examined it, and with the changes that the applicant has made and and what he's offered, we feel like it meets the criteria.
Meets
of-
the standards of the cluster subdivision.
Right, meets the standard of the cluster subdivision. Does somebody want to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to approve the second consideration of a preliminary plat requested by Wells Land Development LLC for a 58 lot residential subdivision on a 18.536 acre parcel located at 0 Stonewall Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 42-12-8.
Can I have a second, please?
I second the motion.
Okay, and I'm going to do a roll call vote here just because we have a potential abstention. So if we can just go down the
Okay.
line.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Approval carries. Okay, now, on to the next thing.
I'd like to make an
Oh, we need to make but that's the next thing is we need to make the,
Let's let Sherry make it since she's got the
Okay.
list in front of her.
yeah.
I'd like to recommend to City Council that they consider adding the additional stop signs, actually the ones that used to be in those areas, the adjoining neighborhoods, to this new community, and with the addition of speed bumps or whatever else is necessary in order to ensure safety for pedestrians, for drivers, for everyone in the community.
I'll second.
Oh, in addition to that, as well as to, again, beseech the developer to decrease the density of this project, please.
I'll second that.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay. Now, are going to have a public hearing for conditional use permit application from Lauren Sandercock to allow for a 1,100 square foot accessory dwelling unit at 1527 Red Top Orchard Road, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 40-1-12.
Okay. So this application is for a conditional use permit to allow a larger than permitted accessory dwelling unit at 1527 Red Top Orchard Road. Just a quick overview of what our code says about conditional use permits. These conditional use permits allow for a case-by-case review of uses which may be but are not always compatible with neighboring uses. In order to approve a conditional use permit, the City Council must find that the proposed use is consistent with good zoning practice and will have no more adverse effect on the health, safety, or comfort of persons living or working in the area, and will be no more detrimental economically or otherwise to property or improvements in the surrounding area than would any use generally permitted in the district. And then the second thing I'd like to do before we get into the request is just have a brief overview of what accessory dwelling units are and why they're considered to be, generally speaking, good thing. So accessory dwelling units are small dwellings that are located on the same lots as a principal dwelling. They tend to range in size from 600 to 1,000 square feet and usually have 1 to 2 bedrooms. In the past, they've been called a variety of names, including accessory apartments, which is how Waynesboro refers to them in the ordinance, granny flats, in-law suites, and carriage houses, just a few. ADUs can also take a variety of forms. They can be attached, detached, take up upper or lower levels of houses. They can be above garages or even garage conversions. ADUs create a wider range of housing options within a community, providing homes for senior relatives age in place while close to family, provide homes for boomerang children, space for guests, or providing places for caregivers to stay, just as examples. So this request is for 1527 Red Top Orchard Road, and this parcel is located to the west of the Lou DeWitt and Rosser commercial areas, north of 64, at the corner of Kaiser Court and Red Top Orchard Road. The applicant has applied to construct a detached ADU larger than what the ordinance currently permits. Their original application was for a detached ADU with 1,100 square feet of interior livable area. Excuse me. And the zoning ordinance only permits detached ADUs to be 600 square feet or 50% of the principal dwelling size, whichever is less. And in this case, the principal dwelling is almost 2,300 square feet, and 50% of that is about 1,200. The applicant is making this request because of their particular situation. The ADU would be built to provide a home for the applicant's father and aunt, which would allow them to age in place while remaining close to family. The application included floor plans that did show a 2-bedroom ADU that was 1,100 square feet of livable area interior, and the original application also included designs for a carport and a large front porch and a basement. The ADU would be built on the rear of the property behind the main house and would be accessed from Kaiser Court. These are a look of what the ADU might look like. It would be facing the principal dwelling, and with the side facing the road, Kaiser Court. And then here are just a couple photographs of the applicant's property. This is taken near the intersection of Kaiser Court with Red Top Orchard. The ADU would be built in the back area here, behind the house. And then here's a look from the side. And so the ADU would more than likely sort of be in this general area with the driveway coming out onto Kaiser Court here, generally. And then this is sort of a rough look of how the dwelling unit would fit or would look on the property in comparison to the neighboring parcels. Neighboring property is here. There's approximately a 9-foot buffer area here, and then the driveway, and then the ADU right here with the front porch up there. So the zoning ordinance does currently permit ADUs as an accessory use to single-family detached dwellings, subject to certain requirements. And the purpose of the ordinance is to provide additional housing options for families and households. These are the general requirements listed on this slide, and these apply for both detached and attached ADUs, and the applicants will presumably comply with each of these. But then there are also specific requirements regarding detached ADUs, and I'm going to run through these in regards to the application here tonight. So the first requirement is that the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. The applicant's lot size here is about a half an acre. The ADU will be built as a separate structure in the rear of the property. And the applicant will need to submit a minor site plan for review and approval through the zoning department prior to construction. Number 4, a landscape buffer, increased setbacks, or other measures may be required to mitigate the impact of such apartments on adjacent dwellings. In this case, staff has talked to the applicant about the current vegetation and if any of it could remain as a buffer if the ADU was constructed. And in conversation with the applicant, it was indicated that most of that vegetation would probably have to be removed due to the construction. But they are willing to do some sort of vegetative buffer that we will determine at the site plan review stage. So staff is recommending as part of this CUP request that replacement vegetation be planted between the proposed driveway and the property line to help mitigate the impact of the structure on the neighboring property. And what the plantings will exactly consist of will be determined during site plan review. So that is a condition that staff is recommending as part of this application. And then the next one, per the code, the maximum floor area of such apartments shall not exceed 600 square feet or 1/2 the size of the principal dwelling, whichever is less. Given their particular needs in this situation, they were requesting 1,100 square feet of interior livable area. Staff did have concerns about this. We were concerned with the not fitting within the intent of the ordinance. 1,100 square feet could resemble a small single-family detached dwelling rather than an ADU. And there were concerns that allowing this would set a precedent that 2 single-family houses are allowed on a single lot, which is not permitted by our ordinance. However, in discussions with the applicant, they were open to the possibility of reducing the size of the accessory dwelling unit to 1,000 square feet or less of interior livable area to help mitigate that concern. 1,000 square feet is on the larger size of ADUs, but still considered within the size range. Staff is also recommending that an additional 200 square feet of exterior area be allowed to permit construction of a porch or a covered rear entry. And this would also help with allowing some flexibility to design an attractive dwelling. As the applicant pointed out, that they will need to use as much of their allowed square footage as possible to make the house suitable for the particular occupants, which are the 2 unmarried relatives. As a result of these conversations, the applicant did submit a revised floor plan showing an 1,000 square foot ADU. It's sort of hard to tell compared to the last versions, but it is a slightly smaller landmark. There is no carport now. It's just the driveway back here with the rear entry facing the property line here. This plan does still show the long front porch. I believe if the 200 square feet were used to provide a front porch, it would probably be approximately half this size. And so this just displays sort of the smaller, more compact version of the plan. And then finally, these are the last 2 requirements for detached accessory apartments. Number 4 doesn't apply in this case, and number 5, the applicants will comply with. And finally, in regards to public utilities, Public Works didn't have any concerns about an accessory dwelling unit on this lot. There should be adequate water and sewer. They did note that the applicant would have to submit a fixture count sheet to determine if a second meter or upgrade to the existing meter might be necessary. And as far as zoning in the comprehensive plan, this parcel is designated as low-density residential. This does comply with the comprehensive plan, and then it is zoned RS12, which is a single-family large lot zoning district. And so finally, staff has determined that the proposed ADU would not detract from the existing neighborhood, and the applicant's use is well within the intent of the ordinance in order to provide a home for aging family members. So staff is recommending approval of this request with the conditions that the accessory apartment should be limited to 1,000 square feet or less of interior living area and 200 square feet or less of exterior attached area to allow for a front porch and rear entry. And that vegetative plantings to provide a buffer between the accessory apartment and the adjacent property be provided, and these will be determined during the site plan review. So that is all I have. The applicants are here tonight to answer any questions you might have, and then if you have any questions for me.
Does anyone have any questions for Allison or the applicant?
I noticed that y'all recommended vegetation between the ADU and the adjacent property, which is buffered by a alleyway, I guess. The 9 foot. What's the buffer between the ADU and Chrysler Road?
Well, we hadn't considered a buffer between the ADU and Kaiser Court.
Or did I miss it?
So I guess it depends on what you mean by buffer.
A vegetative.
So you're talking about not just the space, but actual planting, so.
Yeah, a vegetative space
So that, yeah,
near
that's not,
Chrysler Court to keep it from being seen from the road. Because I totally agree with you. You don't want it to look like there's two dwellings, two single-family dwellings on that piece of property.
and I guess the consideration was, when Alice mentioned the way it's oriented, so kind of the expanse of what you see from Kaiser Court because of the profile along the side is a lot less than the adjacent property owner that would see kind of the fullness of the structure.
Oh, yeah.
That was factored into kind of our consideration about it. But it is, a good point that, yes, you would see it from Kaiser Court, but it would be that side profile of it, not as if it was turned, parallel to the street and seeing kind of the full expanse. I guess if that makes sense in terms of scale.
Yes.
And it meets, all the requirements as far as being from any, right-of-way or easements and those kinds of things.
Yeah, so it would have to meet all required setbacks. And the plant, with the driveway being behind it, adjacent to the adjacent property, the landscape buffer would be on the other side of that to kind of, mitigate not only the driveway, but also the view of the additional dwelling. And we have received comments from, I believe it's that adjacent property owner. So when we open the public hearing, we can read those for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to know
Sure.
what they say about it.
Sure.
My concern is precedent. I've just did some calculations on my size a lot. And I'd love to build my dad a little house on the back of my property. But how do we approve this one and not approve the next one? This is 2/3 over. This is not just 100 square feet over. This is a full 2/3 over what the maximum size is supposed to be outside of the front porch.
Right.
Well, the original was for 1,200. So you're talking about the full footprint.
No. If the footprint could be 600 and we're at
1,000
1,000,
livable space.
that's 2/3 over.
Yeah,
That's quite a margin. And I know my neighbors, I don't know, it just, I understand the housing market is tough now. You know, it'd be great if I could build my dad a little place on the back of my property, but I'm not sure. I think 1,000 square feet's big, and I think it's going to be hard to tell the next person down the lane no. It's a full 2/3 over what the maximum is. And it's double if you add the front porch. So that's my concern. How did you guys think it wasn't a bad precedent?
Yeah. So I think, precedent is always something to think about. But I will point out that a conditional use is very much that. It is, conditional to the very specific area. So when you're factoring in kind of the neighborhood, how it fits in, I don't know if that goes far enough to answer your question, but I do think that as far as precedent is concerned, that conditional use permits have kind of a little bit more leeway in the fact that you all can approve it with any conditions you want. So, if you would like to approve it and limit it to a smaller size, then you would definitely or recommend that to council, you would definitely be within your purview to say that.
Okay.
And any other conditions, I don't want to say any, those that fall within zoning
Right,
practice,
yeah.
but conditions that you also feel would help mitigate impacts and make it fit into the area.
yeah, because I'm like Shannon, how do you approve this one at 1,000 feet? And the next one that comes up is 4/10 of an acre that wants 1,000 acres.
And the ordinance doesn't, it says if it's over 600, you can
Yeah.
get the conditional use
Right.
permit, but it doesn't give you a cap.
Right.
And if it did, that would be
That
nice,
would be
because we
nice.
could kind of have even as staff, know what was
Right.
kind of the maximum. But it certainly, you have the ability to make conditions based on the size.
It just seems a lot over. I guess that's where my
Yeah.
heart just says it just seems a lot over. And I understand the need, and I love the idea of people being able to care for their families and such. It just seems a lot over. But maybe we can get the applicant to approach the podium if you feel like you want to approach the podium. I mean, any more information will help us make a decision. When you get to the podium, if you could give your name and address, please, that'd be great.
Hi there, I'm Lauren Sandercock. I live at 1527 Red Top Orchard Road. So the intent of this property in particular, and I understand the precedent, I understand your concerns. This situation is particular because I have two unmarried relatives. My dad and my mother's sister are moving to this location. It's unusual. It's not something that will happen probably at every accessory dwelling unit. I also feel that when we looked at the zoning, we saw that it said the less of two, you could either have 50% of the square footage or the 600 square feet. It does fall within the 50% less of our square footage. So we could add that as part of the precedent, so that in future, perhaps that would help mitigate, the teeny tiny land and a large accessory dwelling unit, perhaps. I have spoken with my neighbors, and I've tried to make sure they are comfortable with this. I don't want to make our neighbors upset. That's not what we're doing here. I want to make sure that they are respected and that their land is respected and that our neighborhood stays the warm, friendly place that it is. So with that said, I definitely understand your concerns. I understand that we are asking for something that's not in the zoning. We are asking specifically for a conditional use of this space. But I will say, on some of the trees that you're seeing in this picture, many of them on the far left side reside on our neighbor's property. So they would be staying where they are. There's a maple tree that will be staying and a few evergreens that I'm sure will not be taken down, so the existing trees will still be there. There's a ring of 6 trees that are gum trees, and they're huge. They are huge. It's time for something to happen with them, and we're hopeful, of course, to make the backyard pretty. So that vegetative look will stay there.
I just have one question, and I understand the need for the ADU, and I share Sharon's concerns. Why not an addition onto your house instead of a totally separate dwelling? I mean, you could separate the two interiorly, and it wouldn't be no more than
Yes.
an addition that anybody else would put on their house.
I think that we did consider that. I believe when you look at additions, you cannot add a second kitchen. I believe that was, is that correct? Yeah, that was the concern. We wanted to have 2 separate kitchens. And because of that, no matter what, it would be considered an accessory dwelling unit, either an attached one or a detached one. And the detached one had more square footage included in the zoning originally.
That makes sense.
The part of the zoning that you're looking at, which says, or half the size of the principal dwelling.
Yes.
Currently, the plan is for 1,000 square foot ADU with 200 square feet of porch, and that puts you 52 feet over the half.
We'd
And
be happy to lose 52 feet, no problem.
I understand. I just wanted to bring that to your attention because if your intent is great, and I don't think there's a person on here that would disagree with what you're trying to do for your family members. It's wonderful. It's that intent and circumstances change, but buildings are very permanent structures for the most part. And so if we're creating a precedent, then we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. And on that point, is there a precedent in Waynesboro for 1,000 square foot ADUs already set? Or would this be the inaugural ADU?
This would be the first one,
Okay,
to my knowledge.
okay.
There could be some possibly that maybe
Grandfather,
grandfather.
yeah.
I mean, I actually didn't see a problem if your neighbors didn't have a problem, as long as they met all the guidelines. But I'm one of those people too that worries about precedence of things because I think you really, I think it's great intentions. But then as soon as Shannon said precedent, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that normally would be something I would say, because I do worry about it, because sometimes you get what is a good intent, and even if the neighbors are okay here, what would happen if someone else, again, requests it, and now we've just created, we really just changed the zoning. The zoning gets changed anyway, many times it gets revised. I do worry about that, and I know about the common space with 2 different relatives. I can understand the kitchen and the living area. Is there a way that, I don't know what the planned dimensions are, let's say for the bedrooms, is there any way that by reducing some of that you would still get the same outcome? Yeah, it would be a little smaller, but that you'd have the same outcome because you still have your separate bedrooms, so that's, the private areas. And the kitchen privileges and I guess the living area is still going to be shared either way. And if those are reduced, maybe it could be reduced and because it is a good bit, that's a lot over. And again, your intention, is great. 'Cause I'd like to build a little place. I've got a relative I'd like to put but I don't think I could do that.
Well, maybe we should open the public hearing and see what the public has to say about
Yes.
it. So thank you very much.
Yes.
I think he's with the applicant, the
Okay.
architect.
Okay, that's
Okay.
great.
My name is Michael Brown, I'm the architect for the applicant. I just want to address a couple of things that I heard. One thing regarding the size and precedent is that one of the reasons that this could work on this lot is because of the size of the lot. There was a comment made about, what if it's on a very small lot? This could not be done because of the setbacks on the lot, on much smaller than this lot is. There's no way you could do it. So because of the fact that it is this size, it's not cramming is something huge into the lot. The second thing is, as far as revising the plan, getting it down to 1,000 square feet, we have really reduced the bedrooms almost to minimum size already in order to do it. It'd be very difficult to get it much smaller than this without completely removing some major piece of it.
Could I ask how large they are, just out of curiosity? I mean, because when you're looking at a drawing, when I picture, when I first got married, I lived in a house that was not much over less than 700 square feet. Had 2 bedrooms, kitchen, and then, of course, it was all, the immediate family. It was
They're
just my
about
wife and one
13 feet
child.
square about.
Pardon?
Each is about 13 by 13,
The bedrooms are only,
yes.
so what is taking the majority of the space? Because 1,000 square feet is a pretty large.
Each bedroom has a accessible bathroom, which means the bathroom has to be a little bit larger than your typical 5x8 bathroom. And they have a closet. There's a very small laundry area, and then there's a basic kitchen size and a basic small area to put a couch and a living room. That's what there is.
Wow.
Given that the carport has been removed from the drawing now and from the plan, where will parking for these residents be?
The parking is now shown right next to the house where the carport was, but there's no covered structure there anymore.
Right.
Structure's been removed, the basement's been removed, and the access to the basement. And we can and will reduce the porch down to the 200 square feet or entirely if that would, help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm Glenn Slack. I'm Lauren's father. And I don't know how much of the background I need to go into, but my wife passed away a couple of years ago. We have another child with special needs. And my sister-in-law has been helping me take care of my other daughter. And we're to the point in our life that we can't continue. And that's why we've come up with this. My sister-in-law I love her like a sister. She has been a second mother to my children and now my grandchildren. I wouldn't begin to do anything to offend that lady, but we need to get out of the way. We need to let someone else take care of my other daughter, and this was the best way we knew to accomplish that. As far as setting a precedent, that's why you have a conditional use permit. The condition here is we have to provide something, or we're trying to provide something that we can age out in. We're trying to put something together with 3-foot wide doors, something we can get through with wheelchairs. Whatever we're required to do to continue our life there. But we're going to have to move somewhere, because I have to get out of the way and let someone else take care of my other daughter. And the best thing for her is to stay in her home. And that's the reason that we require 2 bedrooms. And the bedrooms and everything else needs to be large enough to get around with wheelchairs, walkers, and that type of thing. It's not unusual to build these types of units with dimensions that allow that. I don't want to build a square foot more than I have to, because I have to finance building it. And that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that when we build it, that it'll be livable, it'll do what we need, and something that I can afford to do. That's the reason for the request.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for a conditional use permit application from Lauren Sandercock to allow for a 1,000 square foot.
Yeah, with the amended plans, they've shown a
with
1,000
the
livable
edited plans
space.
for a 1,000 square foot accessory dwelling unit at 1527 Red Top Orchard Road, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 40-1-2.
So we did receive one letter, and so I'll read it to you. We let them know that we would. So, hello, my husband Travis Harris and I are the Sandercocks next door neighbors at 1521 Red Top Orchard Road. This email is regarding Michael and Lauren Sandercock's request for a conditional use permit to build an ADU and other exterior structures on their property located at 1527 Red Top Orchard Road. We support their request before the city's planning commission, and we understand the growing needs of their family. We do have a question to be considered after reviewing the architect's plans online today. We noticed that the proposed location of the carport appears to be next to or close to our property line. Since we are unsure of the exact location of the proposed planting of additional vegetation that's specified in the plans, if this vegetation is not planned as a buffer between our property and theirs, we would like to request a privacy fence to be installed between our 2 parcels. This fence would run the length from the left rear elevation of our home to the end of the rear property line between our properties. The reason we bring this up is that the existing landscaping buffer of Leland cypress trees and other tall shrubbery along the property line between our 2 parcels were planted by my husband 23 years ago and have reached their maximum maturity. We had plans to remove this existing vegetation, this existing landscaping. However, by doing so now, the proposed ADU and other structures will be completely and entirely visible from our rear yard and in-ground pool. When we considered removing these trees prior to our neighbors' plans, mostly our rear yards would be visible to each other. With the addition of another dwelling, carport, porch, and patio in the rear of their property being proposed, we fear that these structures may now be in our direct view. If a privacy fence is not feasible due to their existing design plans and/or costs to the Sandercocks, we can perhaps figure something else out between the 4 of us to help with this potential situation. We do not want to hinder our neighbors' proposal that they have requested, and we hope that the city's planning commission considers approving their request. So I will point out that, some of the comments in this were prior to or without the knowledge of some amended plans. So with the removal of the carport, the second paragraph that speaks about the vegetative buffer, it was kind of a lack of understanding of where it might be placed, and we would be proposing it adjacent to their property. But certainly if the Planning Commission, if it is your desire to approve or recommend approval of the ADU, you could place a condition that it be either a vegetative buffer or a privacy fence, whatever you think best, or it could be something worked out at the site plan stage. But that was from the Harrises at 1521 Red Top Orchard Road, and that's the only public comment we received in writing.
Okay. I don't see any other crowds here to give us any public comment.
And we did receive a couple calls also, just people asking questions, but no other public comment.
Okay. Okay, well then I think I can close the public hearing at this time. And what do you guys think?
I mean, it's a good idea. My mom and dad have a half acre across the mountain over there, and I've been sitting here visualizing how much another 1,000 square foot dwelling would look on that property. That being said, I'm like Stephen, I'm all for keeping family close. And I am well aware of the qualifications to make a house ADA for somebody in a wheelchair, because my dad spent the last 6 months of his life in a wheelchair. But I also share Sharon's concern. What precedent are we setting? What happens once, God forbid, they're gone? Who occupies that structure? And if, once everybody's gone, if y'all decide to move, or you get new neighbors, they may not like what they see. Because you're right, it is a nice area back there. I myself have looked at several homes back there back in towards the woods back there. Of course, now I think it wraps around and connects to Anna Marie, I think. Oh, it doesn't? But I'm split 50-50, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Well, I feel like my questions about precedent have been answered. And I feel like this is 2/3 over. At 1,000 square feet, it's 2/3 over what the standard is. But it is a large lot. And I feel like after the last few years, if we do need to consider precedent. But I think we can also be a kinder, gentler, more graceful community for a family that's trying to take care of itself.
Yeah.
Within the margins of certainly having reached out to all their neighbors and being willing to make as many modifications as they can to have a workable, livable situation where they can take care of each other. So my questions were about precedent, and they've been answered, and I feel relieved about it, because they're doing the right thing, and we need to support people who are doing the right thing.
Agreed.
That's my thoughts. Any other thoughts?
No, I agree with you. I still just worry, but I still worry a little bit about precedents. I mean, I don't know the family well, but I know the family, and I know some of the situations, and they really had some, they've had some tough times, and they've really, they've done a great job, taking care of a special needs sister and daughter, and
We had
I
a
don't know.
previous planning commissioner who would always say, "Is this really spot zoning?" And I have to say that 100%, in my opinion, this is exactly what a conditional use permit is for.
Yes.
And so if somebody wants to make a motion, and I think I feel like the neighbors are grown-ups and they've offered a buffer, and I feel like, I don't know that it's necessary that we put any more information in about the buffer. I feel like,
Yeah.
I feel like
Agreed.
the people who have presented this application have done their job.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to make a motion,
I do.
we can take a vote on it.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the conditional use permit as presented with the modifications to the new design. And, yes, thank you.
And just to clarify, so that would be with the two staff recommended conditions of the size, 1,200 square foot porch, and with the, screening vegetative buffer to be considered
right.
at site plan stage.
And as presented without the garage.
Yes.
Yeah, carport.
Does anybody want to make a second to that motion?
I still think, I wouldn't make one slight thing, I think the buffer should be in there just because at some point in time, I know it's conditional, but if they do vacate the property at some point in time,
Yeah, so I understood, I understood it as,
included
the
To
vegetative
Oh,
buffer
okay.
is,
Okay.
We
Yes.
included it.
Yes.
and I
Yes.
guess what we're saying is the specifics around it, like what types of trees.
Oh,
Yeah.
That could be worked out at site
Yes.
plan stage.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, so now we have review of minor subdivisions and final subdivision plats approved since September 20th, 2022 meeting. Sorry, I couldn't get that one out.
Okay, so we've only had one minor subdivision plat since the last meeting. This was for 401, 403, 405, and 407 Magnolia Avenue, located, I believe it's 12th Street in Magnolia. Some of you all actually saw this last year for a CUP for townhouses.
Yeah.
And so this is basically just a minor subdivision plat showing some lot line adjustments for those 4 parcels. It's still 4 parcels, they're just moving the property lines slightly. This was approved by staff on October 11th. And that's all with that one, unless you have any questions for me.
I don't think so. And now we need to consider appointing a member of the Planning Commission to represent the Planning Commission on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
As Steve Airy mentioned last time, before he moved to Ohio, he was the Planning Commission's representative on the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we need to consider nominating or naming a new representative. It doesn't have to be done tonight, but I wanted to open up the conversation if one of you all are interested.
And we will point out that, like Allison said, it doesn't have to be decided tonight. We will be seeing, obviously, a new appointment on the Planning Commission to replace Mr. Airy, and that has yet to be done. So that's kind of, if you would like to wait until that happens. And then also the council representative, Bobby Henderson, who could not be here tonight, is not running again.
Right.
So he won't be the council representative. So you will see 2 new members on your commission in the coming months. But it would certainly be your prerogative if you'd like to go ahead and appoint someone now or wait until later. Like Mr. Airy said, the Board of Zoning Appeals meetings are very few and far between, so we're not waiting on someone to get business done. But that's kind of how you all would like to handle it.
What do you guys think?
I know he asked me a couple of months ago if I would attend if one were to come up with him as a potential replacement. So, I mean,
If you're interested, are you interested in
yeah.
that?
I told him I would, and he said, he thought they'd met maybe 3 times in his term.
And we don't have any requests that are coming
I
up.
don't even know how long a term was, but he said that they'd only met like 3 times during his term.
But I'm all for getting a job filled while we can. If you're interested in it, I say go for it.
Yes.
So it's all yours. Yeah, do we need to make a motion for
Yeah, I
that?
mean, I guess we could do it by acclamation. I mean, if there's
Yeah.
no objections.
Yeah. Then you are now our correspondent to Board of Zoning Appeals meetings.
Okay.
Congratulations.
To that effect.
Okay, do we have any other business, any information?
I had just one other thing, unless you all had something.
Nope.
Sort of tacking on to the Board of Zoning Appeals, again, just want to open up the discussion. We were supposed to have the nomination of a new chair and vice chair. Our bylaws say that election is supposed to take place after September 1st of each year. So that's another thing we might want to consider is new chair, new vice chair. Steve Airy's gone, the vice chair is now vacant. But again, new council representative, new planning commission representative, doesn't have to be
So,
decided tonight.
yeah, I was gonna say, can we wait? I mean, I will continue as chair until we.
Yeah, yeah, so, yeah, we're already, I mean, we're not technically compliant with the bylaws and the
Right.
fact that we were supposed to do it at the end of September, but I do think extenuating circumstances, kind of with new things coming
Yeah.
online, I don't, see a big issue with that, if that's something that you're comfortable with waiting for those changes, and then at that, and honestly, we may want to revisit the bylaws in coming times to see if it's best at the September meeting, or if it's best to wait till the end of a year prior to a
Yeah.
new year.
Yeah.
So there's some things that we think we'll be bringing to you in regards to that in the upcoming meetings. So, I mean, I think we'd be fine as long as you're aware that, yes, we were supposed to elect changes before the October meeting, but if the commission's comfortable keeping things as is until new appointments are made, then we're happy to do
I
that.
think it's fair to do that.
Yeah. Has Stephen's position been advertised?
It has been advertised, and the advertisement has closed. We received 4 applications. All of those 4 applications, as they came in, were forwarded along to council. And I'm not exactly sure if they plan to do it at their next meeting, which is Monday, or maybe the one at the beginning of November. But it is kind of keyed up for them to make a decision on those 4 applications.
It really does make sense to make it till the end of the year, because if every few years we're going to lose a council member, or have the potential to lose a council member, to do it in September, and then we're going to get a new.
Yeah.
Even though that person can't play one of those roles.
Yeah, at the
it's
county,
still-
we always did it at the last meeting of the year, and then they would take their seat at the beginning
Right,
of the
see, that
next
would-
year.
That would
That
make
make-
sense
yeah,
to me.
that would make a lot of
To
sense,
me,
yeah.
just because there was so much flux. But anyway.
And the appointment for Mr. Airy's position, it would be, his was set to expire in August of 2023. So the appointment will just be for that time. And
Right.
then it could certainly be extended,
Right.
but they're to fill that,
To fill that.
that term.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I think we're done and we can close the meeting?
I'd like to make a motion.
I'll second.
That we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
Everyone in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
Aye.